everybody, and welcome back to the Manufacturing Summit. So throughout the day, as I mentioned on the last session, we've got a packed agenda, we've got some great speakers, we've got some really great topics. But rather than spend my time going through all of those today, I'm really keen for us to jump into the first session. So this session is remote control, connecting an industrial revolution. And here we're really interested about 5G and private networks and how that's enabling transformation in those hard-to-reach areas. So we've got some great speakers lined up, and the way that this session is going to run, we're opening with a presentation from Krogh Andersen from Telstra, and followed by a presentation from Carlijn from Nokia, and then we'll be handing over to Pablo Tomasi from Omdia, who will be leading a fabulous panel of speakers. So without further ado, I'm delighted to be welcoming to the stage this morning, Kim, please. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe, and thanks for inviting Telstra here to Barcelona. It's a quite long trip, but nevertheless, it's fascinating for us to be here. Also to talk about this topic today. As Joe mentioned, I'm leading Telstra's product and technology, and that go across all our segments, and it's also going from the core connectivity to our security products, our edge and cloud, our private network, and also our IoT and industry solutions. Recently, we also moved IT and engineering and also data and AI into this organization, and to some of you that heard the conversation before, it is super important to have that engineering together with the product to be able to accelerate in the future. I'll also say, just coming into this hall for today and see this sign, Industry City, that was quite fascinating, because people like myself that have worked on that ambition to monetize 5G now for many years know that where the real opportunity are within 5G, that will be in this Industry 4.0. So see that coming to life now, that's a privilege. In Telstra, we have been working very hard to monetize the first phase of 5G, where it's better capacity, better speed, better experience for our consumers. And I'm just coming back from Australia and the Investor Roadshow, and it was a pleasure to actually announce a half-year result with double-digit EBITDA growth and high single-digit revenue growth. And that's really just the first phase. We know that we cannot keep being a growth company without pivoting to industries. And we want to capitalize on the investment we have done in the network. We have more than 80% of the population in Australia covered by 5G. We have a massive IoT network. We have invested into solution and IoT for the industries. But that's not enough. If we really want to capture the value of industries, we need to change as an organization. So that's why I actually talked about that last year here as well, that we have pivoted our entire sales organization in enterprise into industry verticals. So we have a sales organization that is in mining and energy. We have one in construction, manufacturing, ports, retail, agriculture, defense, and government. And that's really because if you want to bring this technology to life, you need to be able to understand the industry you're supporting. So for us, it was super critical to have expertise that are able to talk to the right people in the industries, how technology can help them to transform. So now with this setup, we start seeing traction in these industries. Where we have most traction is probably agriculture and mining at the moment. Today I will be focusing on mining. And you can say mining, that's definitely an industry that is under a lot of pressure. It's under pressure in different dimensions: the climate focus, the ESG focus, the social licenses, but of course also productivity and efficiency, and also the shortage of labor. So there's a lot of things to address in the mining industry, and technology is the answer to many of these challenges. If you look at mining industry in Australia, it's such an important part of the Australian economy. Australia is one of the biggest exporter of a lot of resources. That'll be iron, that'll be aluminium, that'll be coal, that'll be a lot of different resources. If you just take one example, if you take iron, Australia exports 800 million tons of iron yearly. It's more than 100 billion USD, the value of that. Then you can start imagine that if you just improve profitability or efficiency with 1%, that's actually more than 50 million USD. So even small improvements in a heavy industry like mining really make a big difference. If you look at the mining industry, we are really focusing on 3 different areas. When I got out to the mine customer first time, I thought it would all be about efficiency and productivity. But to be honest, they were even more focused on labor safety and on the license to operate or the ESD topics. I'll cover these 3 areas shortly. I'll just say, if you look at a mine and have not been there, it's difficult to imagine the size of it. A mine in Australia, some of the mines in Australia, some of these iron mines in Australia, they're 300 square kilometers. They transport the iron from the pit to the port, that's more than 100 kilometers. They have heavy machinery, more than 50 to 100 heavy machinery. These machinery have 50 to 100 sensors that send data every second. So it's just massive. There's pits, mining pits that is bigger than Barcelona. So you can imagine these heavy industries, they really need to have focus on how they can optimize and automate their business. If we go to the technology needed to do that, of course, just next one. Of course, the connectivity is super critical. We need to ensure there is low latency, super reliable network. And we really start seeing that scaling in Australia now. We are deploying private network weekly and monthly now into the mines in Australia. And that's really to ensure we have that right setup. Then when you go to the other layers on top of the connectivity, you of course have all these sensors that I talked about before. You have video cameras. You have a lot of data. And we need to be able to not only collect the data, but actually also use AI to extract the value of these data. When you have that amount of data, you need to process, you need edge compute. So that's really what drives the need for edge compute. We have talked about for a long time, but without the need and the demand, we can talk about edge compute forever. But now we start seeing that we have enough data, we have enough use cases to really start seeing the need for edge compute. We also need to work on autonomy because, as I mentioned, labor shortages, we need to be more efficient. We really need to ensure that the process is automated. And if you are so reliant on technology, you can just imagine how much focus you need to have on security and reliability. You cannot have downtime. It's the whole production that's going down. So security is a very important part of this. And Telstra, we are playing in all these layers. But we can't do this ourselves. We need to ensure that we have sellers, as I mentioned before, that understand the industry, that talk to the right people in the mining companies, people that not only do the IT and procurement of connectivity as we have done in the past, but the people that operate the mine. That's where we need to talk. For each of these layers, we work in partnership and ecosystems. For the connectivity layer, we work with Ericsson and Nokia. We have also acquired a private network mining company called Krogh, really to ensure we have that capability there. On edge compute, we of course work with Adolfi that was here before, with AWS. We also work with Microsoft on the edge. On the IoT and AI, we have done a joint venture with the biggest AI company in Australia called Quantum to really ensure we have the capabilities to extract the value of data. On the IoT solutions, we do some ourselves, but we also work with the OEMs like Caterpillar and Camacho. And when it comes to automation, we have acquired a company that do automation and process optimization because that's really about processing, called Alliance Automation. So it's more to say, to really capture this value in the future, you need to start now. You need to have started 2-3 years ago to really ensure you have the capabilities that match the industry across the value chain. Then you can expect to actually extract the value as we all want. If we go to the worker safety, I think we have a good example of Newcrest, one of the mining companies that do gold and copper. They have a mine in New South Wales where we have deployed private network. But the real deal here for the labor safety is the digital twin we have developed together with them. A digital twin where we can simulate and have humans working together with autonomous vehicles, with autonomous machinery, and be able to, in a digital world, give alarming and give the detection when there is something to be worried about when you have the autonomous vehicles and the autonomy machinery together with the humans. You can also imagine a digital twin give you new opportunities to actually test and simulate incidents, how your standard operating procedures need to be optimized because you can simulate that in a digital environment. You can imagine how you can work on training. You don't need to send the mining operators into the mine to train. You can train them in a digital twin of the physical environment. You can also use AR, VR to really ensure that when they're training, that it is in as real environment as possible without having the risk of coming down to the real mine before they are trained and educated. If you look at the social licenses, as I mentioned before, that is top of mind for the mines in Australia, of course because of the climate focus. You can also ask, why Telstra, why are you going and work with mines? Isn't it easier just to stay away? We see it differently. Mining is such an important part of the Australian economy. We want to be a part of the solution and not just push that problem away. And we believe it's our accountability as one of Australia's biggest technology companies to actually help bring the right capabilities to improve the efficiency and the sustainability of mines in the future. There's a lot of things. It's really about getting precision in the way you operate mines. It's also about ensuring we get the right data to be able to communicate and to be able to optimize the carbon and the efficiency of the mine. But there's other things. We saw during the last period that mines in Australia have actually destroyed heritage land belonging to the indigenous communities without having the right respect and have the right, you can say, capabilities to avoid these things. We need to help the mines to ensure they actually operate with the right precision to avoid these things, so the social license keep being there for the mines to do their job. We have a lot of examples across Australia at the moment, and we can really see it start scaling. That's not only in mining, it's also in the other industries. But as I mentioned before, we need to start building the entire value chain. We need to start changing as a company because it's such a fundamental different way to do product management, to do IT, to do the go-to-market when you're going into industries versus selling connectivity as we have done for decades. But this is where we believe the next wave of growth will be, and we need to start now. And we work with a lot of different mines in Australia, and we work with all our partners in Australia to extract this value. So what it's really all about is really to ensure we are set up to extract the value we have talked about for so long. We've talked about Industry 4.0 since we started the 5G journey. 5G, the private network, the edge compute, the IoT, the AI, the autonomy and the security. We have all these components, not as one company, but as an industry we have these things. And I think it's our accountability to actually use that to transform some of these industries that really need that transformation. All the physical industries out there, they need technology. And all company, no matter how physical they are a technology company in the future. And we have a huge accountability to be a part of that journey. But I also believe that's what can change this industry to really be a growing industry again, which we all want. So with that, I just want to say thanks for your time. And we will be over here for chit-chat if anyone have questions or comments afterwards. So with that, I will hand over to Joe. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kim. That was a fascinating, great insight. And yeah, as mentioned, at the end of this session, we will be able to meet the speakers over in the Industry City Lounge. Okay, without further ado, for the next speaker, I'm delighted to welcome on stage Carlijn from Nokia. So Carlijn, over to you.
Yeah. Hi everyone, it's great to be here. I'm Carlijn Williams. I head the marketing for Enterprise Campus Edge at Nokia. And as an industry, we've been talking a lot about the benefits of Industry 4.0. You see some of them here, right? It will increase worker safety, reduce energy, reduce emissions. But how much are we actually talking? Do we have the numbers to back that up? So let me ask you a question. I don't know how many manufacturers or how many of you have deployed actually a private wireless or an industrial edge network? Not so many early adopters here, but luckily we have them out there. Because we did a research together with Global Data among 79 of the early adopters in the industry. And now we have some of the numbers. So these early adopters were from mature companies like Japan, Australia, the UK, Germany, etc. And all of them were multinationals. And we asked them, what did you see when you deploy a private wireless and an industrial edge network? And this is the percentage of the population that actually saw an over 10% increase or decrease, depending on the objective. So you can see 95% of the early adopters saw an increase in worker safety, of worker collaboration of over 10%. Another one I wanted to call out, and Kim mentioned it as well, is worker safety. Super important to invest. The number one driver for many industries to invest in private wireless and industrial edge and the applications that will bring accidents down and improve worker safety. So that's also what we saw. 61% of the early adopters saw a massive decrease in accident and improvement in worker safety, so over 10%. Energy reductions, another one I wanted to call out. We all know massive cost increases are related to energy. So 48% of the early adopters saw an over 10% reduction in energy when deploying private wireless. Emission reductions, not on the slide, but about 70% of the early adopters saw an over 10% decrease. So again, many of the numbers are there. One other thing to mention is the ROI, because we get a lot of questions usually. What is the business case for private wireless and industrial edge? What do I need in order to get my business case approved? So some of these numbers will help early majority moving into this area now to get the business case approved, because actually 80% of the early adopters saw an ROI within 6 months and 21% saw an ROI within a month. So we're talking about remote control and Industry 4.0 use cases today. So how can you relate the reduction or the improvement in business benefits to use cases? What do you deploy to achieve some of these benefits? There's no one size fits all, but I've clustered the 4 main groups of industry use cases that we see deployed a lot, and then I've tried to relate it back to what do you get when you deploy it. So the first group of applications is more content to the worker, AR and VR. So these are ruggedized devices and handhelds, which basically enable the workers to get all the data they need on their handhelds. So basically a walking control room, if you'd like. Of course, worker collaboration is increased, and AR and VR maintenance we see used a lot as well. I have some cases on that in a minute in the chemical industry. The second group of applications is mobile robots and AGVs. So basically intelligent robots that are situational aware. And we see a lot of productivity increases there as well. I have a case on that in discrete manufacturing in a minute, but also a reduction in energy costs. If you connect your AGV or intelligent robot to a private wireless network compared to a Wi-Fi network, you will save about 20% energy cost. That's a Nokia number we've calculated based on the usage, etc. And of course, worker safety, because a mobile robot can easily go through a hazardous area, and often they don't miscalculate a corner like a human would. So you see the impact there. Video analytics and camera vision, so intelligent cameras, again, situational awareness. Site security is the #1 use case why this is being deployed. So, and you can imagine that site security goes up, but also productivity. So one worker in a port can monitor maybe 3 screens normally, but if you put video analytics on top of that, then suddenly that same security guard could monitor 35 screens. So it's used widely already in CCTV, but we see this adoption now also in manufacturing sites, ports, etc. Quality improvement, another data point here is 69% of the early adopters, when deploying video analytics in their production line, saw an over 10% increase in quality. So you see a lot of various benefits there as well. Then condition monitoring digital twin, the final group of applications I wanted to call out, and often these are connected, right? Because if you put a sensor on your machine or your pipe and you monitor the quality, or you monitor the temperature or the humidity or whatever you want to know, you can start to get the data. And if you have the data, you can map it back into your digital twin type of application. One other data point I want to call out there is if you do predictive analytics in, for example, a remote drill in a mine, then you can see a 33% reduction in downtime. Once you start to combine all these use cases, we get to something called an industrial metaverse. And at Bell Labs, we build a farm where autonomous drones, powered by video analytics, could monitor the condition of those plants. So you can see mobile robot, video analytics, condition monitoring, all combined into one. But you need one thing. You need a private wireless network, 4.9G, 5G, but also a mission-critical industrial edge with local compute facility in order to make it work. My slides have a reel of their own, apparently, but now I'm going forward. So let's bring this to life. And this is a little bit of a homage to the early adopters in the industry. And what do we see in process manufacturing, for example, now? And these are two use cases I wanted to call out that we've done with the first one with our partner Kyndryl for a chemical manufacturing facility, petrochemical manufacturing, across 20 square miles, one of the largest ones in the Western Hemisphere. And their intention was to go paperless completely. So in ATEX environments, they have provided handheld devices and iPads and ruggedized devices to their workers, so all the data is at their fingertips. There's no remote control room, or they have it in their hands, basically. Another project we did here in Tarragona, actually, was with our partner Cellnex on a 1 square kilometer chemical manufacturing site. It's BASF, actually, I can call it out. And they are one of the early adopters. They have a 4G, 5G SA network deployed with core edge and centralized core. And they have a wide range of use cases deployed there, license plate recognition, but also real-time vehicle guidance, AR maintenance, content to the worker. The chemical industry is making rapid progress. And there's actually, sorry, my slides have, in there you see a QR code which has the pulse of the chemical industry, which is an industry research we did about what are the best practices and use cases in chemical industry. So go and download it if you're interested in this industry in particular. So let me take you to discrete manufacturing then, and what is happening out there. So this is a case we did together with Turk Telecom. Arçelik is one of the early adopters in the industry. And 2 years ago, they were the first in Turkey to deploy a commercial private wireless 4.9G LTE network. And you can hear Pinar Köse Kulash, the Director of Innovation, later on in this summit. But here's a snapshot of their success story. So they have a commercial network of AGVs, autonomous guided vehicles, live in their manufacturing site. So they bring supplies to the production line. And they could see if they use private wireless instead of a Wi-Fi network, then actually the cycle time goes up by 25%. That means that the AGVs are faster through their circuit. And you know, there's other efficiencies there as well. You see one of the AGVs on screen here. So one of the key benefits, and she will talk more about this as well, is once you have that digital foundation in place, that private wireless network in place, then you can deploy a wide range of other use cases as well. So in the second half of 22, they started 8 different other cases, drones in the warehouse, mobile robots to alert workers on health and safety. So you can see you can build from there. mentioned two manufacturing categories, process manufacturing, chemical industry, as well as discrete. But let's go to ports. So digital ports is a massive, we see massive progress there. And I guess ports have two main problems. One's, how do I get as many movements through my port as possible, and how can I do that with the lowest possible costs? So we've done a calculation as well that when you start deploying autonomous use cases like semi-autonomous cranes, drones that calculate the number of containers on a ship, then actually you start to see massive productivity increases. 28% for the average port was the calculation we did. And what does that mean? Nearly 900,000 containers a year can be put through the port when you have that digital foundation in place. Some other benefits there. So Jason Plent from Verizon is one of our key partners, and Jason is in the panel later. He can talk more about ports, but I wanted to call out one of the early adopters, and that is Associated British Port, the Port of Southampton. In the UK, they were the first one to deploy a 5G network, and they have made massive progress since. That was about 2 years ago, and one of the key things they are using now was asset tracking, because they know exactly what cars, it's a main car port, what cars are where and how long are they staying. And if the fleet of Teslas coming into the UK doesn't move within 24 hours, they get a fine. So concluding then, we have the numbers of the early adopters. We see an over 10% improvement with many of the early adopters we asked. There is a QR code there if you want to download the full report, get all the data on ROI, and all these different benefits. Please go ahead and do that. But again, you do need a private wireless connectivity and a mission-critical industrial edge together, because then once you have the local compute facility on-prem to process the data in real time, then you can deploy a wide range of use cases and see all the benefits. But of course, nothing is possible without the ecosystem of partners, like I mentioned. The partners like Kyndryl, Cellnex, Verizon, but also the early adopters I mentioned, like Arçelik and the Associated British Ports. So with that, I'm around later if you want to if you have any questions. But with that, I think a lot of the questions will be answered by your panel. I'd like to invite for the panel. Thank you very much.
Thanks so much, Carlijn. Yeah, thanks to Carlijn Williams from Nokia for some absolutely great to see that real information about return on investment and impact. So without further ado, we're going to move along straight to the panel. I'm delighted to be welcoming up to the stage Pablo Tomasi from Omdia and the rest of the panel. So Thomas, oh, you don't need that, do you? Oh, you do. Perfect. Over to you. Thank you so much.
Can you hear me well? Okay, yeah, fantastic. So we have a fantastic set of panelists here. We bring a wealth of expertise into the private network space. We had two fantastic presentations, but now we're going to continue deep diving on the results that we see in the markets. We're going to see at different verticals and what different providers are doing in this space. So we have a hard stop at 12:30, so we're just going to rush into it, but just briefly kind of touch on each of the panelists and what they're doing. So Mikko, Uusitalo. First question for you. Of course, you are Global Director of Mission Critical and Private Networks at Cellnex Telecom. And the vertical that I would like to discuss with you is potentially you can choose transport or energy. What are the key trends, key lessons that you're learning from this vertical? And at the same time, we are really interested in results, benefits, ROIs.
Okay, thank you, Pablo. So I was calculating yesterday how many we've done in Cellnex. We've done 62 private networks in Europe right now with 52 customers. So we got some learnings over the last years. Maybe I could pick up a segment like oil and gas, talk about the recent example that we work on here in Spain with Repsol Group, particularly with their refinery in Bilbao in Portugal, in the north of Spain. We've deployed the 5G pilot there for 2 use cases, and the use cases drive a lot of that. And the use cases were basically making sure that their legacy systems, the communication systems, can be actually moving towards more of a next generation system. So, voice over IP, technologies that actually replace old PMR systems, the integration of the legacy network and the 5G network. So that was the first use case where you kind of drive cost savings and better functionality. They've also deployed some robots for safety. So that's a typical use case in refinery environment, in a large, complex ATEX environment. And obviously, Petronor Repsol has about 6 refineries in Spain, so the potential is there. So we like to focus on the customers that have a large potential, that have big problems that are complex to solve, and we can solve them. And maybe just a fun fact here to keep in mind, which is, this is all based on spectrum, so and often it's very, very rare and scarce in the countries. So as an advice, I would say go and make sure you get the spectrum to start with, because in some countries, it's still licensed, and that's the sort of a good starting point to keep in mind once you get going.
Okay, fantastic. So spectrum is a little bit, it's an enabler, potentially a roadblock, so something that we should all be working on to make sure there is more spectrum available for this private network market to develop. Now, the second speaker that we have here is Summer Chen, VP GM of Branding and PR Strategy at ZTE Corporation. So welcome to the panel. What I would like to discuss with you is changing vertical and looking a little bit more into the manufacturing space. So what are some of the trends, some of the use cases that you see driving this vertical? And then again, we want to know results. We want to know that private 5G is the big thing that everyone is waiting for. So,
thank you for inviting me here. As everybody knows, ZTE is a kind of a 5G equipment supplier, but now we also a forefront application for 5G application area. So at present, now we have worked with over 500 global partners in 15 industries, and we have joint innovation in more than 100 application scenarios. So it covers from the energy, transportation, artificial, all kinds of vertical industries. And we are dedicated to making the enterprises in manufacturing. We are truly to helping the enterprise from manufacturing to intelligent manufacturing. For example, in China, we set up a kind of 5G intelligent manufacturing base. It's using a 5G private network to set up a kind of securable, high performance and data wholly coverage is a totally 5G technical manufacturing 5G equipment. Mm-hmm. So it's provides of a modern hundreds of technical combining with the legacy technicals. So we realized our 5G cloud AGV and machine vision and inspection robots to achieve our average output per person to 113% and to making the energy saving for almost 40%. So that's a huge improvement for the manufacturing. So this is just an example for the manufacturing to making the benefit for our customers. But considering all our extension applications, we have 3 main points to give to in mind. First, we need to carry out the in-depth, comprehensive scenario research. The second, we need to holding our dedicated professional team, which can be covering not just the communication, we both are focused on the application. And the third, because the 5G private network is need some special dedicated equipment, so it means a massive investment in it. So as I said, all the intelligent manufacturing means a huge investment is just a part of digitalization for the company. So we call it a CEO project.
Okay, fantastic. And effectively, we are seeing results, and there are a lot of applications, so a lot of opportunity to digitize the sector, AGV, machine vision. You can pile up use cases and create a better TCO and return of investment. Now, to our last but not least speaker, we have Jason Plent, partner, 5G and Edge Innovations, Verizon Business Group International. So what I would like to discuss with you, and that was already alluded in the previous presentation. You guys have a very interesting deployment in the transport and logistics sector, particularly for a port. So what are the trends? What was driving that deployment? And at the same time, what benefits, what results are you seeing?
Thank you, Pablo, and thank you for the invitation to be on the panel. Yeah, for Verizon, ports, logistics and freight is fascinating, and it's fascinating for a number of reasons. We were delighted to see ABP become an early adopter because they could see the capability of the pervasive private 5G network, giving them connectivity across the whole port. And then over the last couple of years, we've seen them start to build those applications that delivered the value that Carlijn talked about in her previous presentation. But what we're currently fascinated by, I think, is some of the pressures on ports and logistics. We're seeing, in terms of multimodal transport links, you have now goods coming in and goods leaving by rail or leaving by truck. And of course, all of the port operators are focused on the speed of that turnaround. But there are new pressures for them, I think. And we see those pressures all over the world. But if I can give you a particular example, say in London on the Thames Estuary, what's happening is within that regeneration zone, you'll see new transport networks. So hydrogen boats or electric boats taking goods from Freeport manufacturing zones at the start of the estuary into the center of London, which is one of the biggest economic zones in Europe. So what are the pressures that are driving those changes for the manufacturers? There's government incentives, so the Freeport will have less customs and tax duties, so new manufacturers will go in and create facilities to assemble and produce things like engines or motorbikes or and why are they doing that? Why are they moving into those new locations? Because of the incentives, but because the incentives are there to decarbonize that supply chain and to bring manufacturing closer to the ports and also closer to where those things are going to be consumed. So it's really fascinating at the moment. We're seeing ports say, we know that private 5G can give us this pervasive connectivity. We can understand everything that's happening, but the context in which we now need to do that, there's lots of external pressures. Decarbonization is a very big pressure. We all have to be more sustainable, we know that. So they need to change their relationships with the type of manufacturers and the type of customers they have close to their ports and the relationships with the rest of their supply chain. And that brings us to, I think, a very interesting point, is through the kind of science experiments that the early adopters of private 5G have seen, we see the benefits. And now, as the Nokia presentation showed us, we can calculate those benefits. But I think one thing that's really important to mention today is that is a supply chain, it's an ecosystem in itself. And what I wanted to emphasize is there are different pressures on that ecosystem now. So we need more people to understand the private 5G capability, and we need more partners to build those applications to deliver that value, irrespective of the pressures that are coming from outside. And I think if I would encourage people today to think about, say from Verizon's perspective, we're very, very happy to organize the spectrum, bring in the infrastructure, work on what the value is to the customer, but we cannot do that in isolation. We love to do it with Nokia, but we're also looking for people who understand the applications that will be delivered on that edge capability, and that's very powerful. And I would encourage as many people as possible to start thinking about how to deliver in that new context.
Okay, and I know that I've rushing the question quite a while because I've been told that we have only a very limited amount of time. But if I can squeeze something very quickly out of each of you, if you need to give one recommendation to our audience on how to make private 5G a success, any recommendation for vendors or telcos or for the enterprise, can you squeeze like 30 seconds each? Mikko, maybe starting with you.
Obviously, I'm going to stay here, so just come and see me, and we'll talk about that more in detail. But it's a really, really difficult question because there starts to be a lot of players out there. But I think for you in acquiring a private network, you need to understand and figure out why you need it for and what do you need it for. and then based on that, what are the kind of partners or providers that you want. I mean, if you think about the industry leaders today, Nokia is clearly probably number one. That's kind of known fact. There are others that are proven and well known in the market, like Atonet as a core vendor that actually was just acquired by HP. Ericsson, of course, a big player in radio, and then you have all these new technologies around Open RAN coming as well. Probably not mature enough yet, but that's going to be actually reducing the cost of goods sold, so making it more attractive for deploying one. And you need a good player, a single sort of neck to choke, like Cellnex could be one. Obviously, that would be my recommendation.
Okay, 1 minute, Summer, same question. What would you recommend our audience how to drive this private networks market? Any recommendation for your peers or for the enterprise?
Okay, for 5G application, it needs all the players to join together because it's nearly for not just communication. We need computing, we need big data, we need AI. Every technical should be considering and joint innovation. So actually, considering our experience, all the innovation can bring value for all the companies, verticals, to shortly in 5 areas: cost reduction, quality improvement, and efficiency enhancement, energy saving, and safety. So this is quite important for all the people it will be a greatly improved enterprise's capability for the resilience, yeah. So I think it's a long-term work and needs both of us to work together to get the future better.
Absolutely, long-term ecosystem play. Jason, just 1 minute very quickly before they're gonna, just turn off the mic. One recommendation for the audience.
It's really easy for me. Come and talk to Verizon. That's the first recommendation I would make. The second thing that I would mention is I think it's changing. I think it's really changing. Focus on your IoT. I think we've seen lots of science experiments in IoT. We've seen issues in deploying that. But I think we're going from those small experiments and the ability to understand the data and the value of that data. If you do have a very powerful, pervasive 5G network across your enterprise, it's now about enterprise intelligence. It's now about being able to deploy IoT everywhere. So you look at your lists of costs, energy's right at the top. So why do you not have IoT for every energy-consuming asset? Why do you not really understand that performance? And I'll tell you why I think that's really transformational. Because if you know what it's using, you can really understand if you're using it badly. If you know what it's using, you can really think about effective use of energy in your location. But third, and really importantly, if you have the data, you can model the replacement of those fossil fuel assets, those carbon-intensive assets, with sustainable assets, with renewable assets. If you don't have the data, you can't do the model. If you can't do the model, you don't know how valuable and how costly those new interventions will be.
Okay, fantastic, and just right on time. And let me remind everyone that our speakers are going to be available in the speaker lounge just next door, so you can keep asking questions, keep engaging with them. So please join me in a round of applause for our panel.